And here we are for an unexpected episode of Dualistic Unity Social. Normally, we would be streaming on TikTok right now, but we are not today because my phone is fucked. And that's kind of a fun, merry adventure in itself. When we went to the Netherlands retreat, I took some time afterwards with my daughter and we went to Paris. And as I was wandering around Paris and taking in the beautiful sights, I dropped my phone on one of the beautiful cobblestones and shattered the screen. And then I couldn't access anything, including the camera, which I wanted to use to take pictures of all the awesome places that I was going, or my boarding pass to get back home after the trip. And so I looked around, and admittedly, in hindsight, I didn't look around very well. And this is the reason that it's so important not to panic. I looked around, I found a place that did repairs. I went down there, I asked them to repair the phone, and they did repair the phone, more or less. And so I had access to the phone and the camera facing away from me to go to the Palace of Versailles and to the Louvre, which was awesome. But the phone, the camera facing towards me wasn't working. I should go back and let them know. And so I did. And they're like, hey, sure, we'll fix that. No problem. And they only charged me like 35 bucks for the fucking camera. I was like, all right, thanks. Then I get it home and it's been a couple of weeks and all of a sudden my phone is not charging. And in fact, the charge of my phone is dropping rather precipitously. And so I take it to the repair place here in town and they open it up, or rather they attempt to open it up and discover that it has been crazy glued shut. And that whatever happened on the inside of this phone was as far from what should have happened as possible. And so now my phone is once again in the repair place where they are more or less trying to rebuild it, I think. And I'm paying for more repairs. So at this point, I think I've paid for another half phone, more or less. But on the bright side, it's going to have some new parts and whatnot. But going through this, and this is why I don't have a phone. I was just mentioning to everybody, this is why we're not on TikTok right now. Going through all this, you really just come to terms with the fact that you are always facing the same challenge. Panic or don't. Right? And I find it really funny because I don't have a phone this week, because I gave it up on Sunday at the repair place and I let it go and it's gone for like a week at least. It's that fucked. I just don't have a phone. And what struck me was the very first thing that did strike me was the fact that I couldn't tell what time it was. And I was more or less just standing outside the repair place going, fuck, I don't know when the bus is coming. And it dawned on me that that used to be life. That used to be life. You couldn't just look it up on the app when the bus was coming. You'd have to go down to the bus stop where, if you were lucky, the bus stop had a list of times that the bus came by. And then you just had to wait. That was more or less it. You know, if it was a long enough time, maybe you can go to the coffee shop and run back, but then you had to hope not to miss it. Life was just very different. Not only that, you're just left with yourself, right? When you're standing in line for something or you're going somewhere, you can't just pull out your phone, look at it, right? You can't just distract yourself with the world outside of here and now. And it's been delightful. I have to tell you, it's been really nice just all week long, not having a phone to reach for. Because at this point, I almost don't want it back. I know a good portion of my job is online doing the live streaming thing. So I will get my phone back so we can go back on TikTok and whatnot. But it's just so funny that things that we panic about and not like and get angry about, and, you know, oh God, I had to pay the extra repair bill and all this other shit. You could let it bother you or just not, because bitching about it's not going to do a thing. Panicking about it's not going to do a thing. I mean, it is what it is. And you can just not react. You can just not react. And so I just want to bring that up. You know, it's important to just move with what's happening, adapt, you know, dance on the fly. Like I know at one point in my life, it would have been like, but we were supposed to do TikTok today. We have people expecting us on TikTok today because it's in the schedule. And I don't give a fuck. You know, I'm just happy to be here on Instagram, because at least on Instagram, we can talk about weed.
Very true. And say, fuck, shit, cocksucker, fucking bitch, whore. Now I probably dropped some people. Some people maybe are more engaged now. You know, that's the trade. And that's kind of what
Stick around. He might say something else.
Yeah, there were a couple that were right there. And I was like, steer clear of that one. But that's funny. Words, man. Sounds, mouth sounds, how much that we have a aversion to certain ones. It's funny. But with the phone stuff, like not having a phone, like how much of like how much of the adventure of life is missed through that? Like we almost don't realize in prioritizing convenience, like how much adventure and wonder about life is lost. Like the thought of thinking about like catching a train, catching the bus, it's like immediately I'll just go on my app, look it up, and plan all around that as opposed to being uncertain, like not knowing when that shit's gonna happen. Like, hey, is the bus gonna be there when I get there? Usually it's, I don't know, 30 minutes apart. So like could be there 30 minutes, could be there, 5 minutes. What's gonna happen when I'm there? If I have to wait 30 minutes, I'm just gonna sit there and like be quote unquote bored or do something with that. But now it's like we can completely avoid boredom almost. Like we can actually never be bored in the sense of like never be engaged or stimulated in some way. Like you see it all the time. You see it when you're with people. Like there's a fucking lull in a conversation, and all of a sudden, like on cue, everyone like whips their phones out and just starts like scrolling or doing something. You're in the waiting room at the dentist, and it's like, all right, what am I going to do? And luckily enough, we do have work we can do on our phones. So like, and like I say, lucky kind of tongue in cheek, but instead of scrolling, I can like do something, like edit a video or something. Like there are things I can do where don't need my computer with me. I can just have my phone. But outside of that, like there's so much more excitement that's kind of missed out, and you can look at it as, well, it's inconvenient to not know when the bus is going to come or when a train's going to come or when this is going to happen or when that is going to happen, or have everything planned out throughout the day. Like there's so much of a rigidity now where I guess there was still planning for sure. And I can even vaguely remember I was very young when there wasn't cell phones going on, and I got one when I was like, I don't know, 14 or 15 ish. But there wasn't, even then it wasn't an iPhone. Like the iPhone had just came out when I was like 13, 14. And so I got like a flip phone or whatever it was, one of those little bricks that did not, like, barely took pictures. It was like a 3 megapixel or probably like 2 megapixel or something. But it's like there's so much missed when we're just able to look at our phone, and that balance, it's like we forget the balance between trading convenience for, and like less feelings of not knowing what to do. Like we always have something to do instead of being able to sit with ourselves for a fucking second, 5 seconds, a minute, and just wonder, what do I want to do? It's like, and I am not saying this as someone who like doesn't do all this stuff. Like I do all this shit. Like I'll catch myself when I'm going into the bathroom to take a shit, and I'll like have my phone, and I know if I bring it in there, I'm going to sit down and pop it open and just do some random shit on it. And sometimes I'll be like, no, I'm going to leave it out here, because then I'll fucking be sitting on the toilet for 15 minutes fucking doing shit. And sometimes I do get caught up in like editing a video or something, or posting a story. Yeah, sometimes I post stories from the toilet. Usually they're not pictures of me on the toilet, but it happens. But it's just funny how just that device, and in this conversation, like lots of people will probably make the phone the issue, kind of like how people make social media the issue. And it's like, no, that's just a tool. It's just like a very convenient tool that allows us to do things. But just because you can order food directly to your door and have them open the door, unlock the door, and like basically shove it in your mouth for you, doesn't mean you have to do that. Like you can still order food and go walk, 20 minutes and pick it up if you want, and make a whole thing out of it. If you have a little bit of spare time, maybe you go to the bus stop or go to the train station, and without so much of an idea, and there's a little more like I don't know, excitement, wonder to that situation, as opposed to like knowing and then rushing. And so if you don't know, say for example, you're going to the train station, you don't know what time the train is going to be at, like you could rush and just like hope that you're on time for one, or just catch one, or you could chill the fuck out and be relaxed and like just kind of meander there, and then you're taking things in. But if it's always like, got to make the next thing, got to make the next thing, got to get to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, there's very little meandering, wandering, which allows you to take in your surroundings, and you're a little bit more relaxed because you're not like getting somewhere, which we seem to always be doing.
God, isn't that the truth? I want to take a moment because, of course, we only have so much time while we're on here. And since we are doing an episode of Social, we should remind everybody that we actually have a social media contest that is currently happening. You can win a free ticket to our California mini retreat. The details are here at this QR link or the link in the chat section. Check out the details. This California mini retreat is going to be dope. As you can tell from the photo, it's a beautiful spot. There's going to be a lot of very cool people, and we're going to be talking about some really interesting things, hanging out, smoking weed, generally just learning how to be. So if you would like to join this contest, then you can, just by submitting a video about Dualistic Unity. You can use one of the clips or many clips from our podcast. You can do a video yourself. You can make a point about life and just give Dualistic Unity a shout out. However, you would like to do it, if it gets us some traffic and you end up having the most views in that video, you get a free ticket to our retreat, which includes all your food and all your substances and everything else. And it's worth about $1,800 US. So it's a hell of a contest for sure. That said, just because I hate being too agreeable. Like I really do. Like, and it's just because you can be agreeable right into stagnation. Like it's really easy to just attach to things because they're comfortable, attach to them because they make you feel good, and attach to them because they're familiar, let's just say. And the alternative is to accept the uncertainty that goes with their just being you, and responsibility and all that fun stuff. We talked about Bashar the other day, channeling as a whole. And of course, in the community, there was some discussion about it, and the discussion tends to come back to, well, I don't see necessarily what the harm is. And I get that. I can understand that, but it is this very same harm as, well, having an imaginary friend, and you might say, well, where's the harm? You're not in reality. That's the harm, and particularly for people like channelers, especially, and this is the reason that everybody enables them, regardless of the pain that it's causing them. Everybody's like, yeah, this is great shit for me. We become insight junkies. We actually start to think that the point of this is the next insight, because if we're getting more insights, then it makes us feel like we're getting somewhere, that we're becoming more aware, that we're becoming more clear, that there is a path that we are on. Oh my God, I'm having insights. I'm unraveling things. I must be getting better. None of which is true, but it satisfies that urge to control and that urge to identify, that urge to judge your progress, right? And that's why we get so addicted to insights, which is why I'm so delightfully happy that our podcast can be so unsatisfying that way, because we really are trying to get to the point where you just live your fucking life. Like, just live your life. You don't always have to be looking for the next insight. They happen on their own, right? They happen on their own as you're paying attention. That's really all that's happening. You're getting sight into what's happening, right? Like, that's it. You're looking, as it were. And that's all. But you can actually start to get this perspective that the insights are the important part, because they're going to save you from your life. Those insights are going to set you free. And while it's true that the insights can remind you to relax, the insights themselves will not relax you. In fact, the search for insights becomes quite stressful. And so I just wanted to bring it back to that, because, and I've heard all of the arguments for channeling. I've heard all of the arguments. It's like, well, what's the harm, and how do you know, and all that other stuff. And it's like, I've heard the same arguments for God. I've heard the same arguments for religion. In Christianity, I've heard the same arguments for believing in spirits. I've heard the same arguments for all kinds of shit that take you away from reality here and now. So I just wanted to bring that back up because, you know, I hate being too agreeable.
Yeah, it kind of reinforces that if you're getting better, there's like an expectation that you keep wanting to do things well. And this one's been hitting me kind of hard recently. Like if I stop trying to, anytime I'm trying to do something well or like hoping it goes well, I'm creating this like very not relaxing type of situation for myself. Like, I hope I succeed. I hope I do a really good job. I hope I don't mess up. I hope I don't fail. And it's like, it's not relaxing at all. And so I've been kind of playing with like shifting that, like going into this, like, I hope this is the worst fucking live stream we ever do. I hope it's number whatever, the lowest point, number one worst. Because immediately I'm like, all right, then there's no bar. Then there's no expectation. Then I'm on the ground. Then I'm right here. Then there's no fucking strenuous thing that I'm trying to be or become. And then I'm relaxed. It's like immediately I'm more relaxed. And it's like, I don't know if it's just letting go of expectation or it's some like little mind trick that's been helping recently or what. I don't really care. But I think it's just not having so many goddamn expectations because it kind of, whatever I'm worried about happening, if instead I'm like, no, I'm okay with that happening or I'm good with that happening or I want that to happen, then it like cuts it where it's at because that's not the situation playing out. It's just my fucking thoughts. So I'm like running at the thoughts because if I want a situation to go poorly, it doesn't mean it's going to go poorly. You know, like the situation is going to be what the fuck it is. My idea of a good situation or a bad situation or it going well or it going poorly is entirely irrelevant to the situation going. Like my idea of it is irrelevant. So if I'm like good with it going poorly or whatever, then it's like there isn't so much for me to be. And then I'm just myself because I'm not trying to be something in order to make it good or to be good. So to your point, that process of like gaining more insights, it goes very much hand in hand with getting better at things. And if you're getting better at stuff, then you're always trying to do things well because it's like, well, I got to do it better than last time and better. And what the fuck does that even mean? Like, what the fuck? Better according to what? Better according to what measurement, what barometer, what thoughts about? Is it just, it's just your assumptions about how it went. Like, oh, I stumbled a little bit less on that one. It's like, yeah, but you were tense the whole time and you didn't really connect with anything. It's like you maybe felt good about it, but like there was very little relaxation. And so, you know, different things hit you in different ways in different spots, but it really does come back to like whatever's gonna relax you, like whatever thing, if you want a certain reminder or whatever, you know, it's whatever gets you to that point of relaxation. And like, I want this to go well is certainly not one of them. But in order to, it's like, I think I discount how much, not like work there's been, but the willingness to not do something well. So like there was definitely a lot of points in my life where I couldn't fathom like thinking, no, I hope this goes poorly. You know, like because there was so much on the line. Because my whole reputation, my idea of myself, me looking a certain way, maintaining a certain perspective. And so you kind of have to be willing to not even let go of that, but just recognize that like you don't know. You know, that the idea that you're building or trying to build or hold on to is just like your familiar assumptions about things, your assumptions about stuff. Like no one's having that same idea. So it's been interesting, like just not having, it's just like not having expectations how something goes. And if I'm sort of spinning it into hoping something goes poorly, but really it's just looking at my fear and concern in the face and like running at it, kind of like that the example we were talking about the other day, I think it was in Patreon, of the buffalo versus the cow. Like the cows run from the storm and therefore it stays with them. The buffaloes run towards the storm and they get through it super quick. So it's like running at those concerned feelings or thoughts or whatever, being like, no, I hope that shit happens. Like, bring it, motherfucker. And then there just isn't so much tension anymore.
Yeah. I think that actually episode 123.
Nope. You're
I want to throw that
cutting
out
out a
there for
little
anybody who's
for
looking
me.
for the flow conversation. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't
I'm
know
cutting
if
out
that's
a little
just
bit on
me.
this side too.
Okay. You're good now.
Let us know in the comments, people. Am I cutting out?
Is Ray cutting out? I think you're
Okay.
good now.
So while we're on the topic of the people in our audience and whether or not I'm being heard, thanks for being here, everyone. We really appreciate the support. While you're here, feel free to tap the little like button, because I know this is social media, and so that really helps us. It gets the word out there and gets people involved and all that. I wanted to go back to something that you were saying about relaxing, because it's so important, right? It's so easy to mistake relaxation for false comfort or comfort at all. Right. And we're not talking about the kind of relaxation that comes with convincing yourself that you have all your ducks in a row and all things accounted for and absolute control, because that's not really relaxation. That's relaxation that's conditional. Right. So instead, it's being able to relax regardless of the conditions. That's the work. Right. Is to understand that at the crux of all of this is your response to what's happening from moment to moment to moment. That's where you have to relax. That's the practice. It's not relaxation in accordance to how the external environment is set up or reacting to you or your situation. It's relaxation as a whole, right? According to the moments that happen. It's kind of like when somebody comes behind you and goes, boo, you immediately have that response of, huh, right? Well, there are people who have trained that response out. Like physiologically, they've actually been tested, to have that loud sound. Do they have that physiological response? And basically, they'll experience it and they'll just let it pass, because you can, in fact, relax through shock. You can relax through surprise. You can relax through uncertainty, right? Which has nothing to do with making that uncertainty go away or minimizing the shock or any of that stuff, and everything to do with recognizing your own adaptability. And practice about everything. And this is why it's so important to not get worked up about stupid shit like my phone. Perfect example. There's countless things that I could think about in terms of that whole situation with the phone. I could think about how much money I fucking spent. I could think of how stupid I was and panicking and going to the first motherfucker who could fix my phone, right? I could think about all kinds of shit. I could complain about the inconvenience of not having a phone and so on and so forth. But the only thing I'm really doing is destroying my own moment. The only thing I'm doing is really fucking up my now. And it's just in, what is my response to now? I could think about all those things. Does that do anything about them? No, not a thing. That's the thing. Like, I could think about all of those things and more. Nothing is accomplished by doing so. But it makes me feel better, because now, beating myself up. Therefore, I'm going to get better at things if I just beat myself up a bunch. And it's like we're so simple-minded about it. We don't recognize. You get better at being in the moment if you're in the moment, right? I would have made different decisions regarding the phone had I not panicked. And that has nothing to do with preparing for the next time my phone breaks, and everything to do with relaxing right now. Because that's where that habit or that skill is developed now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was having a thought in regards to this with just control and like feeling certain things, but with the need to maintain certain things. And like to your point, like, maintaining a relaxed environment. It's like, oh, I have like a Zen space in my home or something like that. Like, this is my relaxed space because it's the environment's relaxed, but like you can still be tense as fuck in that. Like, you don't need the environmental, like, fucking, I don't know, candle lit, vibey stuff, comfy cushion to sit on. Like, we kind of misinterpret that as being relaxation, but relaxation is just in response to whatever's going on. And so I was thinking about just like the example I was saying before with looking at the thing you're afraid of and just being like, fuck it. I hope that shit happens. And I can be real if I'm relaxed during it and it happens and I can laugh at it, like, cool. That's a big old dub right there. But when like if you're trying to like there's other practices that people use and I hear them all the time and I use them for a very long time, things like gratitude, things like positivity, affirmations. Like I did not realize how much those are just rooted in control. It's like you're feeling a certain way. Oh, just do these positivity affirmations. Oh, you're thinking a certain thing about yourself, you're feeling a little down, just gratitude. And it's all of these things that you have to do in like just do this to get this, as opposed to why don't you let go of needing to let go of that? Or like, why are you so afraid of that? Why do you have to run to that thing in order to get rid of it? And it's always there's always going to be tension with that. If like you're feeling down, you're just like, all right, what do I do? Grateful. I'm grateful for this, grateful for that, grateful for this. And it's like that's not relaxation at all. That's a desire to overcome a certain thing using force and control. And it's very much like it's almost like more tension in a sense, or it's like doubling down on tension in order to try and equalize it. It's like I'm thinking bad thoughts, so I'm just going to think good thoughts. And now it's like you're just doubling down on thoughts instead of being like, yeah, I'm thinking quote unquote bad thoughts. Why do I think they're bad? Why am I afraid of them? Why can't I just look at them and be like, oh yeah, whatever. They're just thoughts. Thoughts like I want to be thinking these thoughts. What if that was it? It was like, oh, I wish I wasn't thinking these thoughts, and it was like I want to think these thoughts. Like the purple elephant example. Like, don't think of a purple elephant. You're like, and then it's like you can't think of anything but a purple elephant. But then if you're like, try and think about a purple elephant. It's like it's there, but it's like not the only thing you can think about. When it's something you want to do, then it's like, all right, there's a purple elephant, and then there's a green tiger or something, and you jump more. And so I don't know, man, I'm just realizing how much I fight certain things, and like that keeps them around. I said like the quote, what you resist persists before, but it's like I don't know, it's not, it's like it's that pretty much, but it's like a perspective thing, and it's like running towards it again, just being like, no, this is exactly what I want. I want to be doing this, because it's so funny how quick it's been cutting it. And I'm sure there's going to be, you go through stuff and things come up, and then it's like, oh, that one doesn't like work as well, whatever. But it's like, I don't know. It definitely helps relax a little bit more. But how for so long it was like, oh, have certain thoughts, feelings, worry about this, worry about that. It's like, no, just think about this, or just accomplish this thing, or just overcome this thing, or you're worried about this happening, just think about that. And it's like jumping around, like beating around the bush, instead of just like fucking running through the bush and being like, fuck it, I'm not worried about it. That doesn't scare me. And then it's poof, it's doesn't have nearly the weight anymore.
Not even that doesn't scare me, but I'm not going to think about it. Like the whole thing is, there could be countless things that scare me. I'm just going to move forward. So why I said, like, you can go back and forth on that teeter-totter. You can fight your thought, not recognizing that because you're fighting yourself, the harder you fight it, the stronger it gets. Right? Like you can go in that loop forever. Or you can just recognize that you're caught in thought. You're thinking about yourself, which means that you're caught in fiction at the end of the day. And you could say, well, no, that's not true. The only reason is because the alternative is that you are left not knowing who you are, where you're going, what your value is, or how people perceive you. And that's why we think and we rely on thought, because it gives us this idea that we know exactly what's happening. And that's very comforting. But you don't have to convince yourself you know what's happening in order to relax. You can admit that you don't know what's happening. Like, this is something that dawned on me a while ago. I used to have an addiction to tearing myself down. Everything was a negative. I would complain all the time. It was brutal. And then I went through the positivity thing where it's like, yeah, put a smile on it. You have to look at the bright side. You got to be grateful. You got to go do all of that. And that worked for a while, so long as I was propping it up. And that's what it felt like. I was always trying to prop myself up. I was always trying to lift myself because the idea of falling was fucking terrifying. And eventually you just get worn out, or life kicks you in the balls and you end up, losing all of your belief that things are positive, right? You just can't maintain it anymore. And so it tears you back down again. But because you never addressed your belief in the negative, you just tried to compensate for it with a belief in the positive, there's always going to be that fear of the negative. And so it dawned on me, rather than trying to prop myself up, just to stop tearing myself down. I had to stop believing in both the positive and the negative thoughts, because neither of them were the truth. They were both just perceptions. And then you find yourself just here in reality, and that's pretty much it. But that's the core of everything. Like, there isn't a single sport that you're ever going to play where they're going to tell you to think about yourself real hard while you're doing it. Nothing. There's not a single skill. There's nothing that you can do that they're going to tell you, make sure you're really self-absorbed while you're doing that, because your performance will definitely increase. Nothing. We know what it is to be lost in our shit. It's just that we don't understand there's an option. Like, we think there's only a spectrum of how lost in your shit you're going to be. Like, I'm feeling really good. My mental health is positive. It's like, until when? Until when? And that's the thing, is that it's so important to just recognize that you're always going to go back and forth, that life is a giant spectrum, that the emotional spectrum within you is huge. So if you really want to learn to relax, learn to face it, without the false certainty of assumptions, without the story that makes you feel better, without the need for comfort. And what you recognize is, just like anything else, you find strength. And that is so much better. This is why I love Bruce Lee's quote. It's, don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to deal with the hard one. All right? Because an easy life can be broken real easy, right? But a hard person, a strong person, will adapt and change. It doesn't matter what's happening. It doesn't matter what life is. You have the strength to deal with it. And that's far more relaxing than having the perfect environment.
Yeah, and if you're maintaining that story about yourself, even if it's not falling on the tearing yourself down, like, if it's constantly feeling really good about yourself and thinking that it's working, like, it's so fragile, like such a fragile approach, because it's predicated on if you can maintain this, and you're still not in reality at all. Like, there's very little sensitivity, very little relaxation if you're thinking very, very highly of yourself also. And so it kind of, like, even though it can seem like, oh, this person thinks very highly of themselves, they're like having a great life or whatever, it's like, it's still taking away from the experience of life, because there's a prioritization on maintaining that perspective. Like, you still got to maintain it. If you think you look really good or something, you got to maintain looking really good, if that's where you're getting your value from, as opposed to letting go of the need to look anyway, or assume that that's going to ever get you what you want. It's like, oh, I gotta look good until someone likes me, and then I get a relationship, and then I can have kids, and then I this, and then I that, and then what? And then it's like, what, you succeeded at life because now you did the thing that literally everyone else is doing. And it's like just getting back to that baseline. It's like, oh, okay, I'm doing what everyone else is doing. Nice. They seem to be approving just because they're doing the same thing and hoping for that thing to happen. So like when you realize, okay, so maybe that isn't the answer, maybe that's not it. Well, then what is it? Well, that's for you to find out. It's like you're finding out. You're doing it as you go. You might as well relax. Like, who are you really living for if you're not relaxing? And like, we'll even like the amount of life that we trade for other people, like the amount of life we spend considering that. And even the thought of like, I don't know, being ridiculous in public, jumping around like dancing something. Like if someone were to tell you, hey, relax, you're there's people looking right now. It's like, all right, hold on. Am I making their lives better by standing and walking very stiffly and like not acknowledging them doing that? Like, is that improving their lives? The person would have to be like, well, no. Okay, then why should you not do that? And they're like left with that. And there's not really a good answer, but there's this thought of like the right way to act. And it's mostly just like based on fear. It's not it's not helping someone to not do things like that. Like that's not making their life better. Is it? There's probably an opportunity to make it better doing the opposite, a little looser. They might realize like, oh, that's an option right there. Or if they're, make themselves feel better by judging people, and then they have the opportunity to judge you, and then they'll feel better about themselves, only to come crumbling down at inevitably at some point as that falls. But it's that I was thinking about that earlier. Like when we do things, like if I were, I don't even know, like on this, worried about being silly or dumb or whatever, like, or saying something that I felt like didn't make sense. Like, is that, what is it? Like, am I trying to speak very clearly to constantly benefit someone else? Or am I living my life? Am I living my life right now? And is that, and if you realize there's no control, there's no guarantee of anything, it's like, that seems like the most reasonable option, to not be so concerned about everything else that's going on outside of your life. Because, like, again, who the fuck are you living for if not for yourself? Are you living for them? Is that, and then you have to ask, like, is acting like that improving their life? Odds are no. And if you don't know, then might as well, prioritize yours.
Well, and it comes down to the simple question: has anybody catering to your oversensitivity ever helped you? Like when you were being super judgmental and people just cowered around you, was that helpful to you? Did you grow through people not facing you and challenging you? No. You can look back at your life and in honesty know that those moments where somebody called you out helped you become who you are right now. And yet, how hesitant are you to call someone else out when it would help them, just because you would be perceived as the bad guy? Right? And that's the point. We have this idea of right and wrong, of good and bad, and it's largely just based on what we like and don't like. It has nothing to do with awareness, because in awareness, there is no right and wrong, good or bad. There is just what is. There is at most constructive and destructive, right? There is ignorant and then there is clear. But there is no good and bad per se, because one thing leads to many, many other things. You could point out one bad thing that led to something good. Like somebody who's selfish can inspire somebody to be selfless. So is that a bad thing? Right? So in awareness, things are just what they are, and you deal with them with sensitivity and empathy. It has nothing to do with some fictitious structure, some conceptual structure. Right? So it's really important to just keep that in mind. I want to throw this out there. quickly before we wrap up, we have a free group chat happening in 20 minutes. You can join. It's absolutely free to join. We do this every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Registration at dualisticunity.com in the events section, or you can click on Andrew's bio link. That will go there as well. I'll put the link here on the screen. We do this every week because it's a lot of fun to touch base with people outside of our Patreon community. We have group chats 5 days a week on Patreon, and we talk about all kinds of things. But it's just a great opportunity for people to just sit, be themselves, talk or don't talk, doesn't matter. I mean, you're spending your time and your life anyway, and so we are, and so we figured why not spend it with you. If you would like a good idea of what it's like to be a part of the community, I would recommend checking out the latest episode of Life Unpotted. I was really happy to be on the podcast with Daisy and Sophie, where we had a chance to talk about their experience, frankly, with Dualistic Unity, which was very cool for me because, you know, I don't generally ask people like, well, what do you think of what we're doing here? Because I'm just like, what else? What am I going to do? Be more than what I am already? Like I'm already doing the best I can. And so it's great when I hear people talking about just the changes that they've experienced, not because of Dualistic Unity, but with Dualistic Unity, you know, helping along, or at least, you know, being an environment to facilitate that. So it was really nice to chat with the two of them, and they talked about their experience at the two retreats that they've been to. We're going to see them again in the near future. It's just really nice. So if you're wondering about Dualistic Unity, if you're wondering about the retreats and the Patreon groups and all that, go check out somebody else's podcast. No, just kidding. Join us on Patreon if you can. Patreon.com/Dualistic Unity. We have a 7-day free trial. You can check it out. You'll love it. I promise. And it's just because we're just humans. We're not trying to be anything other than what we are. And we're not trying to teach you anything because you already know. It's just that you have a habit of getting in your own way. We all do. And so we're kind of just talking to each other as we work through that shit, because it is a big habit. It's not just an individual habit. It's not just what one person's doing. It's part of our collective consciousness as a species. We doubt ourselves, and we doubt ourselves because we keep thinking about ourselves, and we keep thinking about ourselves because we're afraid and we want a sense of control. Right? But if we were to relax, then we would basically start mastering flow state, which we've experienced as the zone. Right? It's where you're just in what you're doing and everything seems kind of effortless. We experience that shit all the time. And there is actually a way to experience it more often if you can just recognize why it happens and why it doesn't. And yet, as a collective, we haven't learned that lesson yet. So we are all in this together. We are all in this together. There we go. Now, we're going to take a break here. I'm going to pass this over to Andrew, but join us on the free group chat if you can. It's a lot of fun. And we have a Patreon call right after.
Yeah, definitely join the free Zoom. They're always a lot of fun. We do them every Wednesday. They're an hour. No pressure to do anything, but they're a great chance if you're worried about, if you don't like talking in front of groups, makes you nervous, makes your heart race, makes your palms sweaty, makes a lump in your throat go all the way up here, and makes you nervous that you're going to forget what you're going to say. Couldn't be a better place to just jump in to that stuff. There's no agenda. Like there's nothing, there's no topic, there's no thing. It's just a conversation. People bring up random stuff, stories. You can just get on and be like, hey, I'm super nervous about being here right now. And this is me being here right now. And you'll probably get a bunch of woo in the group and whatnot. So yeah, those are always a lot of fun. But yeah,
and if you're prone to getting an upset tummy when you're nervous, the nice thing is it's virtual. So nobody's in the room with you. You can deal with your gas however you like.
You could even throw up if you need to. Just bring a garbage can, maybe. Hopefully, computers are usually expensive, so you probably don't want to puke on that. But yeah, this has been a blast. The link is in my bio for the free Zoom call, and then we'll be on Patreon afterwards. There's discounts. We got a retreat coming up February 1st to 5th in Virginia Beach in a dope house. That's on my story right now, but it's also right there. So there's discounts on Patreon. So that's going to be a lot of fun, but this has been a blast. And I look forward to seeing some of you on Zoom in 15 minutes.
Bye, everyone.